What's up, friends? Welcome to the 2-6 podcast with Luke and Adrian. On this podcast, we focus on Web3 and achieving your personal potential. On today's episode, we're diving deep into the world of VeeFriends, exploring the traits of two VeeFriends characters, Ambitious Angel and Aspiring Alpaca. Join us as we unpack what they can teach us about ambition, aspiration, and making an impact. Whether you're a seasoned fan of VeeFriends or new to the scene, there's something here for everyone. So with that all said, let's get to it.
Welcome to the 2-6 podcast with Adrian and Luke. Today, we're actually going to be talking about some VeeFriend characters. In particular, we're going to talk about Ambitious Angel and Aspiring Alpaca. Luke, how you doing, man?
Doing good, bro. Doing good. Excited to talk VeeFriends. We've had a couple episodes where we talk about VCon, but I don't think we've ever really kind of dug into VeeFriends as a whole. So I think exciting to talk about it and really just kind of focus in on a couple of characters.
Dude, I think we could have probably about 6 months of episodes if we just talked about VeeFriends and the characters, because I was a little undecided today about the two, because I'm a decisive duck fan and a willful wizard fan. But we'll talk about our aspiring alpaca, not necessarily the shoes. And I saw you had a black pair, Luke. You had a accountable ant.
I do have the accountable ant shoes. I do also have the aspiring alpaca shoes. I haven't worn them yet, but the accountable ant shoes I wear pretty frequently.
I like the black, but I have to say, man, I've been kind of a fan of the green, and they're actually pretty comfy, dude. I'm actually pretty stoked. Don't have a whole lot of Reeboks, but I have to say that's a comfortable pair, and I'm not even getting paid to say that, man.
Yeah. No, they're nice. I mean, I'll definitely wear them more. So one of the other bonuses of those shoes, so my favorite soccer/football team is Austin FC, and they happen to be a very similar shade of green. So I'll be wearing them to games. I'm
wearing a lot more green because of those shoes. Just saying.
That's good.
Not because I'm a temporary Jets fan either. So Luke, you wanna talk to us a little, give us a little overview with VeeFriends and who Gary Vee is?
Yeah, happy to kick us off with that. So friends, one of the things that I think is kind of cool. So I actually learned about NFTs from Gary Vee. Like, obviously, like Adrian and I have met him before, but this is long before any of that. So I happened to, Adrian was kind of telling me about NFTs for the first time. I was interested in learning more, started searching YouTube, and came across this great video of some guy getting interviewed, talking about the future of the blockchain, NFTs, and all of that. And lo and behold, it was Gary Vee. And so he was talking about some of the plans that he had for his future project and everything that, he had going on there. He has a whole background in like trading cards. He kind of grew up doing that. That was kind of his first venture into entrepreneurship. And he was talking about it. And I left that episode and was like, okay, I got to get in on his project. I got to learn about it. I told Adrian about it. And then I checked the date on when that episode was recorded, and that episode was recorded a year before I watched it. And so he had already launched VeeFriends, which we'll talk about here in a bit. But it was just kind of funny. Like I was so excited to be a part of it, and ended up not being a part of the original mint for VeeFriends, but did manage to get. Adrian and I both had a chance to get into the Series 2 mint, and then we picked up some other of the NFTs later on. But just kind of overall, Gary Vee, great guy, really cares a lot about people, cares a lot about doing the right thing, cares a lot about positivity. He got his start, as I mentioned, with trading cards. He did that as a kid. Then he took the family business up at his dad's wine store, the wine library. And he did that for a long time. I think he was in his mid-30s when he stopped doing that. But one of the cool things that he did was he was one of the first folks to have a YouTube show. So he had a show where he would talk about wines and do tastings and things like that. Really kind of built up his social media skills. And so then when it was time for him and his brother to start a company of their own, they started VaynerMedia, which if you listen to this show, you've heard Adrian and I interviewing AJ, who's Gary's brother. And so they started VaynerMedia, which is a huge media company. They do marketing, commercials, that kind of thing for huge companies, a lot of Super Bowl ads, which coming up here real soon. Actually, by the time this episode airs, it'll be a few days ago, but just a lot of great stuff. So that's a little about Gary, but Adrian, anything you'd add about kind of who Gary is or anything there?
Mr. Peanut. I still remember that commercial on the Super Bowl. I don't know why. It's still embedded in my head. But I think one of the biggest things that's kind of attractive is, Luke, you and I got really into collecting baseball cards, kind of in the late '80s, and it's kind of cool because I mean it's that same little time scale of the '80s because we're still kind of '80s kids, and you kind of get into the VeeFriends, not only just the NFTs but the cards, and it's kind of cool. It kind of brings that childhood memory back into play of having trading cards. Even though we never traded anything, we were probably always diamond hands. Actually, you traded. We may or may not get into that, but I think you made out on that trade, Luke. But
Yeah.
anyway,
Well,
so
with you, I did. So I'll,
that's the
I
only
will
thing I've
share.
ever traded.
Yes, I will share a quick story. So the only time I ever like traded baseball cards was when I was maybe in second or third grade. One of my mom's friends had a son that was into cards as well. I had this collection of Topps baseball cards, and I didn't know anything about trading or values. I just liked cards that were the team that I liked, which at the time were the Yankees and the Dodgers. And I traded cards with this kid, and he took all of my good cards, and all I ended up with was a bunch of Dodger and Yankee cards. And then I, like, years later, realized like all the good cards that were in my collection that I didn't have anymore, and I had all these duplicates of these other players. So I definitely got the short end of the stick on that one. But that's the only time I actually traded any. You and I had a deal where I traded you in exchange for other stuff. But yeah, that was just kind of wild when I first tried it.
It was always one of those crazy things, dude. I remember people like squirting baseball cards, like Jose Canseco, dude, which was like he was huge back in the day, and they were like squirting him with a squirt gun, like making a hole in the card. And I
What?
just remember, like, I don't
Like at the
know,
state
dude.
fair?
No, it was actually in an apartment complex that we were living at the time. And dude, they're just destroying cards, dude. Like, putting it on the spokes of their bike tires, and then one kid
Yeah.
was like squirting Jose Canseco in the face with a squirt gun, and until he made like a hole in his face. Dude, I don't know. It just for being back then and like collecting it, like for me back then, it was like investing for kids. It was like I'm gonna be rich by collecting all these worthless pieces of cardboard, and they're still compiled in my third car garage bay untouched. So
that's,
it's like a
that's
storage
good.
facility.
Just keep them there.
No,
Maybe
it's
one day they'll
good.
be
It's
worth
good until it's
something.
not, right? But I think what we're all kind of working towards, and I know Gary's mentioned it quite a bit, but like turning real world assets, RWAs, into digital assets, and then sending the good ones off to a vault to where if we can need to ever sell them, as we can sell the digital asset without actually having to store it, and it's just not taking up my bay in my garage, which I desperately want back. And it's horrible, man. I got mixed feelings. It's like my childhood collection of investing, all in a all in a bunch of box in my garage that I just can't stand anymore. It's
Yeah, well,
weird.
the ones that are worth something, get them graded, send them over to Courtyard. I think it's courtyard.io, if I'm not mistaken. They'll store them all for
Yeah.
you. You'll turn them into NFTs. You can hold on to them, and you don't have to worry about keeping them safe. They'll do that for you. It's with Brinks. They're like one of the main like vault
I
companies.
need I need ambition, and I need the aspiration of doing it, Luke.
Eh,
Is that our topic for our show? Is
it's. I
and
mean, that's the
that's not even
topic for
played.
that's the
But
topic
I
for
need
the
I need
show, but that's the
ambition.
wrong definition.
I'm trying to use it in a sense. I,
You're
I, I
talking
never
about
did good at English.
motivation.
Ah,
Motivation. That's what you're looking for
I
on
need the
that one.
determination and a process of doing it. Is that any better?
That's better. That's much better.
But no, I'm lacking it because it's like I'm just gonna make a mess. I don't have any room to spread out. But anyway, let's
Nope.
stay on topic, Luke. Talking
Yeah.
again
So
about ambitious angel and aspiring alpaca. Like, what do you see? What do you think your definition? I might have tried to use it in a sense, but what's your definition of aspiration and aspiring? I mean, it's kind of different. It's aspiration. Is aspiring still aspiration?
yeah, I mean, aspiring is the act of having aspirations. I would
There
say
you
that,
go.
yeah, it definitely is.
Action's always
But yeah, but
important.
we'll talk about that, and then we'll kind of jump back and talk a little bit more about like what VeeFriends is, because we talked about Gary, but not VeeFriends yet.
Oh
But I think to
yes,
me,
keep me
like
in line, Luke.
ambition is setting your sights high. It's the, not kind of just striving for like the lowest standard, that kind of thing. It's, going for to do your best. And that's kind of how I think about it, is that it's trying to do something that might be hard. It might be something that you're scared of. But it's, you know, either having the confidence yourself to do it, or just, setting a high bar in terms of what you're trying to do. So whether that's in some kind of sporting thing, if it's like, if you're a runner, it might be setting a time that is a little bit, aspirational or harder to get to, or it might mean we're going to try to do something with this high level of quality. I kind of think of that as what it is. And I think ambition has kind of a similar meaning, at least to me, where it's wanting to do good, to do a lot, to do something like that, have an impact. I think is one of the big ways I think of it. But how about you? How do you kind of think of those two
Dude, I
things?
just think of Dad saying "ganas." Was he? I think I asked him about that in our episode, didn't he? Having the
You did,
ganas to do it.
yeah.
I don't even know what ganas means, but I know what it means in terms of the way Dad said it. But
It's
it's
like
having
fire in the belly, the drive,
the
that kind of
drive.
thing. Yeah,
It's like we're your ganas age. It's right here, Dad. I'm here. But right, it's like having the desire, right? The desire of wanting to do it, wanting to get on the ball field and do well, or wanting to, get to the point to where you have a positive outcome in terms. It doesn't always have to be like success or whatnot, but I think generally you want that drive, whatever it may be, to get there. And
yeah.
that's what it is to me. I always think of Ganas, dude. It's Dad
That's so
saying
funny.
his
Like, see,
talk.
he never once said that word to me.
Oh,
I
it's
don't
me
know
and
if,
him, huh? I got
yeah,
the
it's just, it's
privilege.
a, like when you told me that for the first time, I was like, I've never heard him say a word in Spanish. But
I don't think he would even say it was Spanish. You just use the word like it was crazy nine rats or something,
yeah, yeah. So awesome. Well, let's talk a little bit about VeeFriends. So obviously, so VeeFriends is a part of Gary V's universe of things that he does. But do you want to kind of talk just a little bit about what VeeFriends is, Age?
Yeah, if you ask me, it's going to be VeeFriends the way I see VeeFriends. But generally, I think when I look at it in terms of like the trading cards, the NFTs, they generally all have some meaning. I think VeeFriends in general is almost like Pokemon meets Sesame Street, is the way Gary would kind of describe it.
Yep.
Which is great actually, because I again, we probably all grew up, especially if you're an '80s kid. We grew up with Sesame Street, especially if you're in that younger '80s group, and that's what I think of immediately, even when he says it, because I watched it. I mean, I probably learned how to talk and say words and whatever it may be, but it's almost putting these, and they might be a little bit too big of words for some of the little kids, but they're important words. And I think it kind of drives you to getting into the point to where if they do, which I think they are starting some cartoon episodes, but it's
Yeah.
truly giving you that definition or that visual of what all these characters are about. And it doesn't relay just the word, but it gives you a character that goes along with that word. So, decisive duck, which, and it seems like they always kind of intermingle with, decisive, the D8 is decisive. Let's do a duck, kind of like a willful wizard, kind of like what I mentioned before, but it's kind of like putting this positive vocabulary together and how it can relate and giving it to kids. So you have automatically all this positive vocabulary and not talking about um, anything negative, except
Yeah.
you're gonna die, fly, because I think we all hate flies and flies should die. But but I
Well,
mean,
the
to
"you're gonna
me,
die" fly is more of like it's almost like a YOLO kind of thing, where it's like it's putting things in perspective with the, and we'll probably get to "you're gonna die" fly at some point in the future, but I think
no,
that
it's
one's
good.
definitely like
I just
it's
thought a
like
fly
live your
was
life
probably
to the
buzzing around his
fullest.
face, and he just wanted to kill that fly because he was so annoyed by it. Which I think we could all relate to flies and how much. We want
I'm
them to
personally
die.
not a big fan of flies, but one of the things that you kind of what you were saying kind of made me think of. So yeah, so he definitely does describe it as Sesame Street meets Pokemon. One of the things I think is kind of cool about it that he also talks about is that obviously Gary Vee has his own persona, his own brand as to who he is, with kind of the the way that he speaks and that kind of thing. One of the reasons that he wanted to create VeeFriends was that his message is not always received by others just because they'll decide certain things about him based on the way he talks, the way he dresses, that kind of thing. But VeeFriends would be something where you can have that positive influence on folks that can come in the form of, let's say, helpful hippo or willful wizard or something like that that they can really connect with. And so I think that's one of the neat things about it is it kind of gets that message out there in the same way, and I think it can be really powerful. So you mentioned Sesame Street before, so I actually had a chance. For those of you that know who Brett Goldstein is, he was Roy Kent on the Ted Lasso show. He was actually here in Austin doing a stand-up show, and he was talking about like the best day of his life was the day that he was on Sesame Street and got to hang out with all of those characters, and just that it was like literally like the coolest thing that he'd ever done. He wished he could do that every day. And it's just kind of speaks to what the impact of something like that can have on a person, where if you grew up watching Sesame Street, that's a huge deal. Like they were a big part of your life. And like for me, like my personal experience with that, I will say to this day and probably every day in the future, the absolute best museum I've ever been to is the Heinz Museum in Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania. And the reason it's the best one is that they have the authentic Mr. Rogers set. They have several of the puppets. Like I went there and I was like, oh my God, that's King Friday. Like
Wow.
that's like Henrietta Pussycat is there. And like all of these characters that were like a huge part of my childhood were there. And it was like I've gone to like other places. I've seen like the crown jewels of England and, Sweden and all this stuff. And it's like, I don't care about any of that. That's King Friday. Like that is the actual King Friday. And it was just blew my mind. So I think one of the cool things about what Gary's doing with VeeFriends is that this has the potential to be that for future generations. So I think it's just a cool thing.
I think Gary's the new modern day Mr. Rogers. He could be. He could be.
Hey, um, his characters should be. I don't
Mr.
think a lot of
V.
I don't think a lot of parents are going to sign off for having someone with his language around their
We
kids.
all
So
curse a little bit. It's not the first time
yeah,
these
but you
kids
don't want
hear
to
it.
do that around your 4 or 5 year old who's like learning to do
Yeah,
stuff. Um, but
I know, right?
one of the other things that's kind of cool about VeeFriends, before we kind of get back to the two characters we're going to talk about today, is one of the other things that he says about them, in addition to the Pokemon and Sesame Street, is Batman. So, one of the things that is kind of cool about Batman is that there's so many different versions of Batman that can resonate with different people. Like for a little kid, they would be probably following Lego Batman because he's funny, he's a cartoon, that kind of thing. And then there's other like more comic booky, silly Batmans, like some of the other cartoons. And then you get all the way to like the Batman or like the Dark Knight, and those are things that people that are a much higher age, there's a lot more violence in those. But Batman as the brand and as the character can resonate with all these different people, and there's a version of it for that. So that's kind of the same thing with VeeFriends, or at least what Gary's striving for, is that there'll be the one that's for kids, but there's also VeeFriends that, the same character but evolved a little bit, is for different audiences, which I think is just kind of cool about it.
That's interesting. Batman's always been a badass. I probably resonate with after school cartoons because I watched them every day. But that Batman series, that was the best one. That goes along with a lot of those things, but without getting off topic too much.
Yep. Yep. So it's awesome. So with that background, and obviously one of the things we didn't really get into too much is that VeeFriends is an NFT project. So there's different versions of them. There's the Series 1. We're not going to really talk too much about the differences there, the utility there. Really, I think we want to really get into just kind of talking about some of those attributes of the characters. So ambitious angel, aspiring alpaca. Age, do you want to kick us off with kind of what are those two? And I think they're very similar, so we don't need to necessarily get into
Sure.
ambition and aspiration separately. But what do those qualities mean to you? Like, how would you how would you kind of just describe like how they play into your life?
I think they're kind of good, dude. They mix well together, the two of them, and it's almost kind of like a double edged sword in a way, to where, if you don't balance, and I know Gary talks a lot about this too, but if you don't balance the two, you can kind of get to the point of getting too much anxiety or even burnout, and maybe in some unhappiness if the balance with some of the other qualities like patience and humility aren't present. um, but generally, I think it should be somewhat of a healthy incentive and not necessarily a burden,
Yeah.
um, to have ambition and aspiration. So it's truly just enjoying the process, and I think that's one of the biggest things, and that's probably why I get pretty turned on. It's probably not a right, not
You
turned
get
on. What's the fucking word? I get excited. Thank you.
excited.
That's probably one of the things I get excited about with listening to Gary's content, and how I got kind of drawn in. That's a better term. It was just finding a way of actually enjoying the process of pursuing your goals,
Yeah.
rather than being solely fixated on just the end result. And it doesn't necessarily have to be associated with, sometimes, like in our industry, it's not cruelty, but it's almost like dog eat dog mentality, to where you're always trying to outdo the guy in the next cubicle or in the next office. And what Gary's kind of to brought to the moment is it doesn't need to be that way. You can be totally positive and supportive, and not even just using positive words, but just patting him on the back. It's like me losing a listing to a competitor who I also know, but it's like, hey, bro, you did a better job. Hey, I'm glad you got it. Hope it all works out. Let's do a deal soon. But it's like, even though it's like gut wrenching in my hip, but it's also just like, you can bury that negative feeling and just be a little bit more positive with that. And before I went on a little tangent about that, but it's truly like building success by adding value, and also creating like positive relationships, rather than kind of undermining it. That's kind of related to what I was just saying, to where it's just keeping a positive mindset versus letting the jealousy or frustration take the best of you. So to me, it's like ambition is about the balancing it with patience and humility. I think I probably get that a lot from Gary and probably what he's saying, but focusing on the personal happiness and passions, and pursuing the goals with like true kindness and a positive mindset, and being happy for others, even if you weren't the winner of the day or the winner of that deal, the sale, whatever it may be. So I mean, that's the way I look at it, man. What do you think, Luke?
Yeah,
How do you
yeah.
see
So
it?
one of the things that you said that I really liked was the balance side of it, because I think sometimes when people think about ambition, they think about like stretch goals. They think of these things that are just really kind of setting their sights really high, and I think that there's a certain amount of that that's healthy. That really kind of helps you to stretch your comfort zone, achieve things that you didn't think you could achieve, that kind of thing. And then there's a certain like line that you can cross with that that really just kind of leaves you disappointed with yourself all the time, because if you're constantly
Yeah,
trying to be more or more, and you think that you always have to be going up and that kind of thing, it just can be really disheartening when you get to a certain point where you can't continue to exceed those goals. So like, I know a lot of the examples I'll give have to do with running, and so like there's a certain point where you can make really big strides. Like if you're new to running, maybe you're starting off running 10-minute miles, and then you set your goal, I'm going to be able to comfortably run a 9-minute mile for 1 mile, and then you got that, and then you want to set a goal that you want to be able to run 5 miles at an 8-minute mile pace, and you get that. And at a certain point, those gains don't keep coming. Like you get to a certain point where you can maybe get a 6-minute mile, but you're not going to get much faster than that unless something really drastic changes or that kind of thing. And so if you kind of get that mindset of always raising the bar, then at a certain point it can become really challenging. So I think that's one of the things that I think of with that. So it's always good to kind of know if you are going to be ambitious or setting your sights high, just making sure that you're not always raising that and going too far with it. The other thing that I want to mention, just kind of having to do with aspiration, is when it comes to like statements of the person that you want to be. So like, let's say you're like, it's one of the things that I sometimes will do in journaling. And I know I've talked about Michael Chernow on the show before. He's a podcaster. He runs a podcast called Creatures of Habit. He also has a company with, food and that kind of thing. But one of the things that you do as a part of his program is kind of writing out, words of affirmation. And a lot of times those are aspirational words of affirmation. So it might be describing, the person that you are building yourself to be, as opposed to the exact current state of where you are and that kind of thing. So I tend to think of it that way as well when it comes to, writing out certain things in the way that I want to see myself and I'm working towards seeing myself is another thing as well.
So no, Luke, that was I love it, dude. So are there any other things that drive you to being more ambitious and aspiring to get to the next level?
Yeah. So one of the things that's really been kind of on my mind right now in terms of ambition, and I think listeners, I think I mentioned on the show before that I'm currently in school and getting a master's in blockchain and digital currency, and my background has not been really so much on the technical side of things. So my background is in traditional finance. My degree's in business and marketing. My undergrad is, and I'm now getting a master's in computer science, and so I've learned a lot having to do with that. But most of the coursework that I've taken so far is kind of the kind of foundational stuff. So there's a lot of different things related to like law and regulation and blockchain, like blockchain entrepreneurship, things like that. And this semester that's starting tomorrow for me is where I get to actually choose the courses that I want to really learn about. And one of them is digital currency programming. And so part of the prerequisites of the class involve, having a firm understanding of Python, some basic understanding of Bitcoin script. And I have a minimal experience with that. I've taken, a few hours of coursework on Python and Codecademy, and then, a little bit of Bitcoin script work in some previous courses. But by and large, this is my first time really doing it. And so it's really been on my mind, like, you know, this is absolutely what I want to learn in this program. So like if I leave this program without learning to write, Bitcoin script, without learning coding, then what was it all for? But the other side of it is like what it has me thinking about, this is definitely aspirational that I'm taking this course, knowing what I know about my current knowledge on coding. But I feel like it's the right thing to do. Like it's going to push me. It's going to be a challenging semester, but at the end of it, I'm really going to know some stuff that I went to school to learn. So that's kind of where I'm at, and I'll definitely keep y'all updated as far as how it goes. But at this point in time, I feel really good about the decision to do that and kind of take that leap, knowing that it's going to be a challenge.
I'm excited for you, Luke. I'm want to ask my big brother questions that I don't know because I didn't want to take the same courses you're taking because I lack the ambition, Luke. I lack it. I'm more of a not necessarily a jump or shoot before I aim kind of guy, but it's like, man, I need to I need to be in the action. But it's almost like no, but it's good. I mean, it's I think it truly suits you, and I think what's really cool though, with I mean, not getting into off topic, but with blockchain itself, is that this is almost like trying to figure out the internet when the internet was first here or first came out. And I think we
Yeah,
all wanted to dabble with it. I wasn't sure. I remember I went into, AOL for the first time, and I was like in a chat room and talking to people in different parts of the country or different parts of the world and being fascinated by it. And I'm
yeah,
sure people before me got fascinated with like the radio, not just the radio, but is it transistor, the transistor radio?
yeah,
I've never had a transistor radio, so
yeah.
it.
You
But
have,
anyway, you just being able to communicate and not like that communication's still here, but I think it's just the new technology of it all and what it all means and where the future is. So no, man, I think it's great because, I guess talking more about my ambitions of this whole technology with, starting off with VeeFriends and Chicken and a lot of the other projects that we're involved in is what else can we do with this? And my mind goes crazy because I'm always thinking, of course, I got a real estate mind. So I'm always thinking, man, how can we turn some of these projects and making them sustainable? And could we make them sustainable with a business, or could we make them sustainable with real estate investing? So, for me, I think that's what usually drives me is like just not only the excitement of, being a part of these projects and the games that they're kind of creating it, because, gaming is always been, I'm a gamer. So by heart and love, and my ambition was gaming, but playing games all the time doesn't get you anywhere. I was aspiring. I wanted to remember, Luke, when we wanted to be at those Nintendo championships that they had back in the day. I didn't even know they existed, but man, I remember what movie was that? Anyway, I'm going off
The
topic.
Wizard. It
The
was The
Wizard.
Wizard with Fred Savage. And that was when they released Super Mario 3, and they like traveled across the country. They went to Reno, earned money. Listeners, if you haven't seen that and you're like under 30, maybe even if you are 30, don't watch it. You're not going to like it. But if you're over 30, it's some fantastic nostalgia. Definitely give it a watch. But anybody that grew up with like Nintendo 64 or later, you're not going to enjoy the movie.
That was a good call, Luke. But it's true. I mean, it's what we kids. I mean, dude, what do we have? We had magazines. Like we couldn't go
Yeah,
anywhere to
Nintendo
like
Power.
figure out like how do I pass this level. Let me just go on to Discord or on to Twitter, whatever, or a chat or Reddit,
Yeah,
whatever.
there's no
Right?
YouTubers making videos to teach us how to do the game. It's just
Yeah.
wait till
I'm
they
like, you go to
come out
school,
with
and you're
it,
like,
and
dude, have you played this fucking game? Like, how do I get past this stupid thing? But it's one of those things I think where I can sometimes be a little bit too ambitious. Um, to where I'm like aim shoot, man, aim shoot, and sometimes I probably need to aim a little bit longer and then shoot. It does remind me of hunting because I did recently get into it, and it's one of those things, not just shooting from the hip type of deal, but I think that's one of the best things for me is the aspiring part is it's okay to take a little bit of time to learn something versus just jumping into it. And I guess some of the examples I remember, Luke, when you moved to Austin, I was looking at opening up a Chiba Hut, a sandwich shop, and it was going to take like 50 grand, which to me was all the money. I don't even think I had a full 50 grand back then, but I was so pumped on it, just like getting into the Chiba Hut because I liked smoking weed back then, and it was one of those things to where it was like, man, this is something that I can really do, and I can get, I'm gonna be a millionaire if I do this. But then I started doing all this research, and I'm like, fuck, dude, I don't think I could get in the right location to make this a big thing. So it's almost like it's one thing about being ambitious, but also doing that research of making sure that the numbers work, making sure that the location of whatever is going to work, the business, and it's sometimes good to be ambitious, but also being a little bit patient by doing the research and making sure something's going to work.
yeah, and
Another example would be when I jumped into I call them furnished rentals. A lot of people call them vacation rentals or Airbnbs. Um, I was going into a market. Actually, my very first one I bought was in a less desirable area here in Albuquerque, but I got a smoking deal on it, and I wanted to try it. Another coworker had talked to me and telling me how successful it's been, but I tried it, and it was a huge risk. It was a 5-bedroom, 2.5 bath. It was like 2,800 square feet. It was huge. Just wasn't in the ideal location. But sometimes, in terms of ambition, it was like it was just kind of, let's just do it. I know I'm going to be able to do something with it. So if it doesn't work out, I'll do something. I'll sell it. I'll rent it, whatever it may be. I had an exit strategy, but it was ultimately, it wasn't aiming too much. It was almost like a quick little aim. Okay, shoot. And sometimes when you do too much aiming, you can sometimes get in your own way a little bit by overthinking things. I've got an analytical mind, so I tend to overthink a lot because I just want to make sure that the numbers are going to work. And sometimes I get so deep into the numbers or so deep into the process that I'm forgetting about just doing it. Because a lot of times when you know it's going to work, especially if you've done some of that research and you've done some of the, you know, just looking at into the process of how things are going to do it, what the market's going to be like, who is your market, you can overthink yourself out of just about anything. So I think with that balance per se, it's really just kind of pulling that trigger and kind of jumping in, but with caution, or with some research behind it.
Yeah. Well, the thing I was going to add to that was that I think really what you're getting at is not having blind ambition. Like you want to have a bit of like being rational as a part of it. Kind of thinking through, some of the downstream impacts of whatever that is that you're trying to do your research, that kind of thing. So I think it's a little bit of like being realistic, and also kind of managing your bandwidth, I think is a big part of it. So I think one of the
Yeah.
things I sometimes end up with is I will make decisions as to what I'm going to do, what I'm going to get involved with based on, do I think it's a good thing? And if that answer continues to be yes for a lot of different opportunities that I'm presented with, then sometimes I will kind of overcommit myself or get into situations where I just have like a ton of stuff going on at one time. And so I think you also want to be kind of selective in terms of, don't be overly ambitious with your time either. Like don't underestimate, do I have capacity to do all of these things? And so, and I'll just share listeners for like a kind of a personal story. So like, one of the things if you follow me on X/Twitter, you might have seen that I'm actually involved with two podcasts. So there's this one that Adrian and I have, and then I'm also a part of a podcast called the ATX DAO podcast. And so love both of them. So if you want to listen to the other one, that'd be great if you're really interested in the technical side of things. But it is a drain on my capacity. And so like I'm doing a lot of things that are important to me that I think are really good things. I'm, working a full-time job, going to school full-time, and working on two podcasts with some great co-hosts, like Adrian. And sometimes that can be a lot of things to do at once. So sometimes you can be real ambitious and kind of overestimate your time that you have to devote to things, and sometimes can get you in a little bit of a pickle. But love doing both of those things. I just can't add any new things. But that's one thing just to kind of think about as you're kind of thinking, how can I stretch myself? Just knowing, what's too far in that stretch.
Yeah, no, and it's, dude, it's always a constant balance, right? I mean, dude, I was Stephen Covey, man. Stephen Covey changed my life. I wish I could tell him, man, you've changed my life. Listening to the five first, God, were they CDs? I don't think they were tapes. I think it was the
It would have
first
been
two
CDs, yeah.
CDs, actually, the first two chapters. I don't know what it was, man. But I have to say, dude, keeping the end in mind, um, is always kind of the constant thing, right? In terms of having that aspiration of doing what you want to do. Some of it's always like monetary. Some of it's relationship based. It can be, it's always thinking of like the outcome, and am I going to like doing this? And I think that's what really kind of drives me, staying in this space. For one, it's exciting. Two, Luke, you're here, so I mean, dude, it's definitely brought us closer together. The networking in general with people in these other projects. I mean, even I would never dreamed I didn't even know who a Gary Vee was when I first met him. You know what I mean? And I was like, oh my God, I knew that I had a chance to say hi to this guy, and I did say hi to him. But it's pretty amazing, dude, to not go too far into the rabbit hole of these different projects, but it's the part that's attractive. I don't know, man. What is it? Is it just the technology? Is it where the future is going? And maybe it's just a I don't know, man. Is it? I mean, not necessarily money, but it's maybe just building stuff. I think that's what it is, Luke. It's building stuff,
Yeah.
and it's almost like building. I keep telling Luke, oh, dude, I can't record right now because I'm building my deck, and I finally finished that thing yesterday. Finished it, Luke.
Nice.
It's done, and it's like playing Lincoln Logs again. If you're over 30, Lincoln. Actually, no, they came back. They came back. My kids played Lincoln Logs, but it's almost like playing Lincoln Logs. And even though I was starting to get a little burnout, I'm like, I need to finish this damn thing. Even though it was fun in the beginning, but after a while, it's like, man, it's been 5 years, and I'm halfway, and I built I built the deck, and then, or I built the porch, and then I built the deck. But it was, I have to say, man, getting to the point of starting something and having that ambition and the aspiration of doing it is pretty rewarding. And as of yesterday, it was nice to sit back, sip on a brew, and like, damn, I'm done. So it's almost kind of the same thing even with a space of just like building stuff, building a project, building a community, whatever it may be. And I think that's probably what keeps me in this space is like, dude, I want to build something. I don't necessarily know how to do it. We're all just trying to like figure it out and learn as we go. Luke, you're taking a great step of actually learning the insides and the background of how things work. I'm probably more on the connection base where I just like connecting with people and the right people. But man, I think one of the biggest things is making you're starting to see the need. I'm seeing the need in these spaces of where a lot of these projects happen to not be sustainable. Um, but there's good examples like VeeFriends is definitely sustainable. Um, Chicken is sustainable in its way. It's just noticing it, but also how can I add true revenue? Because I hate to say end of the day, but at the end of the day, you're gonna any type of revenue is gonna make companies and products stay here for the long term. So I'm just trying to look at it as like, okay, if I can take this coin and bring some of these community members who want to invest in these projects, we can all grow and benefit at the same time. Now, do I have it all written out? No. And that's what I'm learning kind of behind the scenes. Do I want to go buy a $10 million apartment complex tomorrow? Maybe not tomorrow, but definitely soon. But I want to do it not only with people that I know in my network, and it's also bringing Luke, it's bringing our family members, it's bringing our community members, whether they're in VeeFriends, VSP, Chicken, you name it, Love Monsters, all those guys. It's and can't forget Mad Skulls, but bringing that whole community that we are a part of and getting us to a point to where you're bringing a sustainable project, or maybe you're bringing a real world asset and making a project more sustainable. So, and even sorry, Luke, I went on a rant on that, but that's my ambition, right? And I mean, that's my that's where I get excited, dude. I can't stop talking about it, and that's what I want to do, right? And that's what keeps kind of me in these projects is I want to learn the inner workings. Sometimes a lot of the stuff is over my head, which is okay. I'm never downplay things that are over your head, but it's having the true ambition and figuring out, would you say, the aspiration to making it work. And having certain things like VeeFriends and these characters as a reminder that it's definitely possible. I think that's for me, Luke. It's huge, man. Where it keeps me rolling. My kids, my wife are like, what are you doing all this for? It's like, dude, I don't know what I'm doing it for, but I feel like I have to do it. And to me, it's making connections, right? It's like, even with what we were doing last week with Project Venkman with Bill Murray, it's just making the connections, whether we're using them or not, or we're just making new friendships. It's just, man, I am meeting some incredible people that do some incredible things. And you never know when that bridge might just be perfect, where you're just like, dude, I didn't know you did that. I forgot you did that. Could you help me out with some of these security issues that we're running into? Give me your thoughts on it, whatever it may be. So sorry, man, I went on a little rant there, but
No, you're
that's where my
good. You're good.
ambition
Yeah.
comes from.
So
I was
I
being a
think for
llama.
me, when it comes to like the networking, that kind of thing, like really, I just look at it as a way to, make new friendships and that kind of thing. Like, sure, there may be something that comes of it if, we find some kind of, synergy that we can work on something together. But I think it's just about meeting cool people, learning from them, and, hopefully, having some new friends that I can have. So I think that's one of the big things there. I did want to share with you one thing. So listeners, if you recall a previous episode or previous episodes, plural, Adrian's talked about like, I don't know him, but he touched me on the shoulder once. So we went to an event a couple weeks ago, and it's a reference from Gladiator, which is a movie from about 20 years ago too. We're going all in on nostalgia today, by the way, listeners.
God, it doesn't seem like
So,
20 years
so
ago.
but
Shit.
it's been quite a while. Russell Crowe. We went to this event with Bill Murray there, and I didn't get to personally talk to him, but I touched him on the shoulder once as he was walking by me. And so, at some point, if Adrian and I, make it big with the podcast, maybe Bill Murray will say, I don't know Luke, but he did touch me on the shoulder once, and it'll be a legit thing that happened.
That would be awesome, especially the other way around, right? Because I'm the guy that's always saying, everybody's always asking, how do you know all these people? I was like, well, I don't know him, but he did touch me on the shoulder once. Anyway, it's even though that's changing, I have to say, our not our influence or anything, but just this being around these groups, Luke, I have to say, man, is pretty exciting. Even keeping it on with Gary V too, asking him, being a part of VSP, we had a meetup, a virtual meetup with Gary V and AJ, and dude, asking him just the ask, having the ganas or the desire, the ambition to ask Gary Vee to be on the podcast, even though it was just on the chat, but he responded. And actually, he didn't respond to that. He turned his head down and scratched his head because he was really thinking about it. But I followed it up with an email, and homie responded and said, touch base with me in June, and then we'll see what we can fit you guys in. Or maybe he didn't say that. Maybe, we'll talk then. And I think what Gary always says, and I think what I strive for, and I remind myself too, to just keep myself aspiring, to take action, is don't be afraid to ask. I think that's one of the big things that Gary's always talked about. He's always appreciative of the ask. Always, hey, appreciate the ask, but no, I can't do that. Or appreciate the ask. And a lot of times he's saying, you guys just don't hear enough no's. And unless you were a telemarketer, which I was, again, for anybody who's 30 plus years old knows what MCI WorldCom was, and telemarketers back in the day selling long distance, because now we don't even have to deal with that. But I heard no's all the time. And I have to say, working in a job like that where you're being told no all the time, it becomes like, dude, I'm going to get me a fucking yes today. I'm going to get me a fucking yes today. Even though you get not shit on, but you just, you get fruit thrown at you, whatever. It gets wearing to hear so many no's. But the people who are truly successful with getting past the no's to getting to the yes, it's even more rewarding. And I think, even Luke, you gave me that great question to ask Gary the other day about some, basically getting out of his new book that he's coming out with, and the attention game, and giving us that 3-minute answer was huge. And normally, and Stacy always gets on me, like, I'm like, babe, do you think I should ask a question? She's like, I already know you're gonna ask a question. So I'm like doubting myself if I should ask a question, either this Grant Cardone or Gary Vee or Bill Murray. And dude, it's I guess learning also to have a little bit of confidence, dude. And I don't know where that confidence comes from, but I have to say, man, even there was that great TED Talk. There was this chick, man, I wish I knew her name, but she was all about body language and fake it until you make it. So anybody who doesn't have any confidence up front to make that big ask, going in there with, man, I wish I could, maybe we could put a link if I find it, Luke. It's a great TED Talk. And dude, she's, I mean, talking about body language, and even the body language before you go into a meeting, a body language before you go into anything that you need to be maybe a little bit more confident, shrugged shoulders, posture, even though I'm probably slouching over here. But a lot of times it's amazing. Even she's in my head all the time, to where I'm like, sometimes I'll be slouched over, and before I go into an appointment, I'll totally take, like, literally, it doesn't need to be all day, but like 20 seconds, 30 seconds, change my body position, and it just kind of automatically builds up this confidence. So anybody lacking, and I'm not saying I'm perfect and I'm totally confident to do anything, but it does truly help to learn a little bit about body language to help with that confidence level of asking these big names questions that you're already feeling. I'm not going to ask you, he's going to say no, but like truly just, dude, I'm going to fucking ask, because if I don't ask, how am I going to know he's going to ever do it?
No, but I think that's a couple of good points there in terms of, just the importance of confidence, the importance of, striving for, to be your best self. I think is probably part of what you're getting at there. Just that aspirational approach to the person that you're trying to be and that kind of thing, I think is one of the big things there. But I think that's probably a good place to transition a little bit. Some of you may be aware there's a new social media app that has recently come out, and it's called Farcaster. It's actually a decentralized social media, which means that you aren't beholden to any kind of one organization that houses all of your stuff, and if they close your account, then you're just out of luck. Farcaster is not like that. We are not sponsored by Farcaster, but are bringing it up because we do actually have an account there. So if you do want to follow us on Farcaster, we are at 26, at just the number 2, SIX. So it's a little different than some of our other social media. That's one of the kind of perks of getting in there early, is that you can get the name that you want. So our other socials are usually 26 media, but for this one we're just 26. So definitely give us a follow there, and we're looking to have some good stuff posted on there here in the near future. All right, listeners. Well, thanks so much for joining us today. We really appreciate you sticking with us, and definitely rate, review, and subscribe wherever you get your podcasts. And we look forward to chatting with y'all again soon. Thanks so much, everybody.
26.
Thanks for tuning in and spending some quality time with us. We're all about bringing value, and we hope today's episode hit the mark for you. If you like what you heard, follow us wherever you get your podcast, and while you're at it, give us a rating and share some comments letting us know what you'd like us to cover in future episodes. If you know someone who'd appreciate our content as much as you do, we'd love it if you share this podcast with them. It really means the world to us and helps get the word out. Here's to growing together and bringing you more incredible content week after week. Until next time, friends, keep chasing your potential and living your best Web3 life.